We are here at Hilton Bengaluru Embassy Manyata Business Park, right in the heart of Bengaluru, India's vibrant tech hub. Welcome to the first episode of the Changemakers with Forbes India and Hilton.
As a consumer, it's the best time to be alive.
Value creation only happens when you do difficult things.
The energy comes from following the purpose.
Today we are driving into a dynamic dialogue about the trends, success stories, and opportunities redefining the future of India.
We are a younger population. Imagine the kind of economic growth it can lead to.
Thank you so much for joining us, Shruti and Ahana and Ankur, of course, bringing in the diversity to the panel. Ankur, let's begin this conversation with you.
Firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
India's story has been phenomenal. On the economic front, India has been a key growth engine for the world, contributing 16% to the global growth in 2023. What is your take on the role of global brands driving this growth story for the country?
I love the fact that we are a democracy and an open market because that genuinely gives a level playing field for any brand to come in. It does make jobs harder for domestic brands, and I have to admit, because we just love intuitively an international brand than an Indian one. So the domestic brands have to work harder, but I'm up for that challenge. I love the fact that we are a young demographic, one that is exposed to the entire world at the speed of thought. They do not distinguish between what's local, what's not, what's made cheaply, what's made with a certain cost factor in there. And that essentially tells me that for the next 20, 30 years, we're going to peak from an age perspective at 2042. So till 2042, we'll be one of the youngest, if not the youngest country in the world. And we're a median age of 27, which is ridiculously young. We have 400 million people who are going to join the workforce in the next decade, a number that no other country has ever seen, ever in their history, including China. And that means the next 2 to 3 decades, I am extremely long and bullish on this country. And I feel that if we lose this time, it'll be completely ours to blame. Like, I don't think we'll be able to blame anything else, least of all destiny. We have it in us to make it or break it, because everything, at least in my opinion, is set for us.
You started and became an entrepreneur at a time when being an entrepreneur was not the it thing.
I distinctly remember my entry into entrepreneurship was a complete chance incident. I was meeting a friend of mine from business school. We had spent time together the same year, and he was like, "Hey, I've started this new website and I wanted to talk to you about it." I said, "Sure, what's it called?" And he said, "It's called secondshadi.com. And I was like, "Kya ye wahi karti hai jo mujhe lagta hai ye karti hai?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, it's a matrimonial website for remarriages. There's so many people who get married in India, so there are bound to be people who get divorced and widowed. And this is a platform for them to get married again." And I'm like, "That is such an incredible idea, bro. How did you think about this?" So I just fell in love with that idea. It's like, let me just help you in whatever capacity I can. So for a year and a half, I had a very different journey. I had a day job as a management consultant, and during nighttime, I was Batman trying to get people married again. And when it got to a certain size and scale, then I decided to quit my consulting job, much to the dismay and disappointment of my parents, because they didn't understand why someone who's not even married the first time himself would leave his cushy job to get people married again. But I'm so glad that happened, because the last 14 years have taught me so much about myself. I think entrepreneurship is the most brutal form of self-discovery. It teaches you exactly who you are right in your face, and you can't run away from that. And I'm so glad that I've got to do that.
Yeah, and Shruti, what's your story? What inspired you to start Apna Club?
So at Apna Club, what we're doing is that, we're creating a very simple modern wholesale system for Kirana stores. See, today, all of us are probably using one or the other e-commerce, Q-commerce apps to, receive your FMCG goods. Kirana stores for the last 90 years, have contributed to 80 to 90% of India's FMCG supply chain. And this world has suddenly become complex and I would say chaotic for them, right? Now, who is the person who is going to help them move to the next, leap? That is where, an Apna Club really comes in. For me, see, purpose is very important because small business is very real business. The decisions they take impact their families almost immediately. And, I think you really have to be humble and realize you may think that you understand their long term, right? So I'm like, oh, digitization is coming. If you're not part of this, you're going to be killed. He's thinking about his today and his tomorrow. Right? So I think it's really good if you go out, you listen to your customer, they'll give you the most useful insights to build your product. So I think that's been our journey, right? To start off with some glitz, You get the reality check, and then if you listen to them, you build something interesting. If I can make kiranas compete against like all of these modern retail formats and win, that's a big win for me.
Ahana, what made you start something in such a niche segment, which is healthy snacking?
At Open Secret, we say we are on the mission of unjunking. And the reason I became very passionate about unjunking because I was a product of junk. Imagine a young girl, 3x my size, sitting in a small city called Bharatpur in Rajasthan, eating ghevar, bhujia, and just studying. And at that time, to be honest, did not have any awareness that what you eat plays such an integral role in your health and wellness journey. It's so weird that I only understood the importance of nutrition and food when I was in the US. I still remember I visited Whole Foods and I was blown away that there is this destination for families where you only get better for you products. And it made me wonder, like in India, packaged foods is going to be a $200 billion category in 2026. And I do believe that, it's extremely important that we think about building a healthier India. The demographic dividend, we are a younger population. If we can stay healthy, imagine the kind of economic growth it can lead to.
How is technology transforming business models and also consumer behavior? We have seen so much of change over the past 1 decade in the way in which we behave.
It's unprecedented what's happening right now. So I remember in 2008, 2009 when I started, people were warming up to technology, and technology was almost always what the elite, the most well-known, the most well-equipped individuals had. Today, every one of us has a personal computer in their hands. It's the same phone that is used by the richest person on earth as well. It's more or less the same internet. It's more or less the same access that you have to information and technology. And what that does is it democratizes information, but it also makes it intensely hard because now it's a level playing field and you can't suddenly claim that technology is your differentiator. So you can't suddenly come and say, oh, I'll make an app for your business because there are dime a dozen people who can do the same thing. You can't suddenly say that technology at my end will make your operations more cost efficient because almost everyone can do the same thing. You can't now even claim that I can be a good writer or a good thinker because Gen AI can do the same thing for you. So it's becoming really hard for a business to establish itself purely on technology. But as a consumer, it's the best time to be alive. Whether you're a business, whether you're a retail customer, you have literally everything at your access which you couldn't have imagined nearly even 2 to 3 years back. We take this for granted, and this is peak Bengaluru, so I can speak with confidence here. You need a book, click. You need clothes, click. You need food, click. You need grocery, click. You need love, swipe right. Whatever you want at the speed of thought is delivered to you at a doorstep. And I don't want to sound old, but I am old. I'm 44. I grew up in an India where we had to wait for everything. Now consumers are very demanding, rightfully so. They need the best product. They need the best service. If you can make it happen, technology, great. But frankly, they don't care what you use to give them what they need.
Ankur, so it's becoming even more difficult for the businesses then, to set up and establish themselves as brands.
I'd argue that we, at least in the Indian context, have something which works for us, and that is trust. We are a very trust-deficient society and culture. हमें बचपन से सिखाया गया कि दाल में कुछ काला है. If the person opposite to you is being really nice and is agreeing to everything, कोई तो गोची है, कहीं तो scheme है बाबू भैया. So you're always on your guard. Now, what that does is it also creates massive opportunity because if you really are able to win the trust of the consumer, you can genuinely sell them anything that you want. And that is the beauty of being in this culture where I feel creating a brand is not so much about how good a job you do, even for the consumer it is about how much of a trust have you been able to build. That does come by time. It cannot be bought over by money or by technology or anything else. And that does reward longevity in this country, in this culture. And that also means that if you're not there when things were the hardest for the consumer, you can forget building a great business.
A big component of trust is authenticity. I think consumers, they're very smart. Gone are those days where you can have this 10-second ad and you can try and influence the entire 1.2 billion population. Now they can see through the BS. And as a founder myself, I realized that we have to share our story, our purpose very authentically and straight from my narrative as well. We are very grateful for the post-geo world. Now, a family in Bharatpur has the same information about our brand that a family in South Bombay is having. That information asymmetry has gone, and that's because they might be buying offline, but they're getting influenced online. And that's only possible because of the digital penetration which has happened. And I think one amazing thing which is happening in India right now, we have all discussed the GDP growth of the country. It's 2x of how the world economy is growing, and consumer sector is playing a huge role. But one big shift which is happening, and I still remember 6-7 years back, we used to talk about consumption as an inverted pyramid. What does that mean? The top 1% of India is driving a lot of consumption. Now it has become a hexagon, which means the middle class, the middle section is driving the majority of the consumption. And the middle class, they want to look better, they want to eat better, and they want to, again, consume the same products, like the same biscuit, but they want a better for you version. So as a new age brand, we really want to leverage this shift where consumers are willing to spend more for a better experience, for a better service, for a better product. Again, I will not say India is price conscious, India is very value conscious. So if you can give a value, and I think health is definitely becoming a value that consumers are seeking.
Specifically after pandemic.
Absolutely.
Over to you, Shruti. Tell us, since we are speaking about technology, tell us how is technology bridging the gap between traditional retail and modern retail?
It has been such a big boon because the supply chains across India have become faster. They become more connected. This makes a difference. Like my trucks can go like between like Delhi to like Bihar in 2 days. It's so different from what it used to be. Like a company like Apna Club could not have existed without the GSTN network. It could not have existed without like a UPI network. So we keep coming back to this. Technology helps all of us deploy that working capital better. It makes your retailer earn more while you're happier. So that's how we think about like technology's fundamental shift in India.
Who's the change maker that has had like an impact on your life? Who's inspired you? Ankur, anyone who's had an influence on you, any change maker?
From a founder's perspective, several. So it'll be very hard for me to name them. But from an individual perspective, I'm deeply influenced by Gautam Buddha. And I feel I'm not a Buddhist by practice. I'm not a religious individual as such. But I love how his teachings have really influenced the way that I think about life, how at the age of 44, I'm living a very different life from what I thought I would be living at 24. And I'm really happy and content where I am. And I feel that one individual, and I'm sure that he existed because there's documented proof, but if he did, then thanks to him. But if he didn't, then thanks to all the storytellers that navigated his stories and made us reach it.
Ahana.
Whoever I'm today is because of my angel mother. And the reason I'm calling her a change maker in a state like Rajasthan, which has one of the lowest female literacy rate, she was a single working mother. She was a professor. And when all the families were training their daughters to be brides, she pushed me to go out for the best-in-class education. I don't think there has been a bigger change narrative I've ever heard in my life. And that has always stayed with me. Even when I was starting this open secret journey, I was like 30-something, and everyone was saying, "Pehle shaadi kar lo, settle ho jao, uske baad startup kar lena." And she was someone who said, "This is your dream, you are building for your passion, go for it." And I don't know how many women can actually say this in India, that they had no pressure on getting married and building for their purpose. She taught me the importance of being financially independent. We were discussing why we have our own manufacturing unit. I can give you now a strategic answer that we have high innovation velocity. But the basic insight why I started my own factory, because I visited a lot of contract manufacturers in Bhiwandi. And I was very clear that I want women on the shop floor, because you can talk all about women empowerment, but if they're not financially independent, it doesn't make sense. Money gives you power to make decisions. All the CMs, they did not even have female toilets. And I was very clear that today, as a leader, as a CEO and founder of Open Secret, if I don't walk the talk, if I don't employ women, I have no right to talk about women empowerment. And I said, I'm going to make my own factory. I'm going to have women on the shop floor. I'm going to change how manufacturing looks like. And Why this has happened? This has happened because of one lady who I unfortunately lost in COVID wave 2. She deeply influenced who I am today. And I hope that with my work, I can influence millions of girls out there.
Wonderful. How wonderful. Ankur, you are someone, who has been through series of
They're called failures, but sure, yeah.
but every entrepreneur has the same
Exactly.
story. Any entrepreneur that you speak to. But tell us a time where, you had to really step up for your industry, and how did you do it?
I, for the longest time, ran a deals company, which was Groupon in the US, and then it became Nearby. So I have nearly 8 to 9 years of B2C experience around pricing and bringing offline retailers online. And the biggest lesson that I learned there, Shivani, was, again, driven by trust, that both retailers and consumers, when it particularly comes to deals and discounts, don't trust intuitively what that deal and discount means. We think that India is a very deal-loving country. We're a very price-conscious, value-conscious culture. So, जहाँ भी हमें discount मिल जाएगा, हम पागलों की तरह दौड़ पड़ते हैं. But that's not true. I remember the first days of Groupon, we did a really commendable job of bringing the best retailers out there, the finest restaurants, the finest spas, salons, 5-star hotels, movie halls, and so on, listed them on a exciting 20, 30, 40% discount. And we thought, boss, ab to ho gaya. Like, we've killed it, we've arrived. Now the market's going to flood itself, the website's going to crash, we're going to become, at that time, Forbes 30 under 30, wo hua hi nahi kabhi, but get there. And nothing moved. Nothing moved. People came to the site, they checked us out, and then they left. And they're like, what's happening? And then we started doing these consumer calls, and we realized that people were like, kuch to scheme hai. It took a really long time for us to convince both retailers that pricing and dynamic pricing is a necessity for inventory limited business, such as a restaurant or a spa or a salon and a movie hall and so on. And for the consumer to believe that just because you're getting a quote unquote great deal doesn't mean that you get suboptimal service. And you shouldn't feel that way. And that was a learning for me, because it told me that the Indian consumer is truly value conscious and not price conscious. ये नहीं है कि सस्ता मिल रहा तो चले जाएंगे. हमें अपनी इज्जत बहुत प्यारी है, and we love our self-respect. We don't want to be seen as cheap, but we would happily love a bargain that makes us look cool and smart. And that's what we suddenly started working towards.
What would be your piece of advice for the next generation of change makers?
I think people should focus on like the emerging, population of India. So we've all like looked at the top 10% population of India. We are like living there right now. And there are a lot of solutions pointed at that. There's a next 30% population coming out. There's an immense, potential. There's this immense money to be made. There's immense problems to be solved, right? And not everything is like, of course, a for-profit problem. Some of them are like societal problems which you should go after. And so I think like my advice is like, don't limit yourself only to that part of India which you now understand. Don't be intimidated by an India that you feel like, Bihar mein warehouse kaise chalega? Bahut aaram se chalega. Right? So please go after the big problems, go after the emerging set of India. It'll reward you so well.
Ahana?
Be authentic. I guess everyone has different strengths. Everyone has unique skill sets. And the worst thing that you could do is try to be someone else and try to fit in. And the reason I say this because I feel I have taken 2 to 3 decades to be unapologetically myself. But if I could restart, I would just prioritize who I am and just stay like that.
Yeah. Ankur?
Number one, the audience is not just entrepreneurs and founders. Frankly, you could be anyone and be a change maker, even if you are in a job and so on. And the cornerstone of that is the word change. And what I read when I see change is your ability to unbox your own self and destroy your own identity if that need be. A simple test. If I were to ask you, hey, what do you do? And if you give me a designation at a company, that means that you are boxed. Because that's your entire identity. Even if you were to tell me you're a content creator, you're a chef, I don't know what you do, Pooja, but no, you are. Yeah, exactly, right? So you fell into the trap. But no, the larger thing is, my best answer to what you do is, how much time do you have? Because I do so many things in life that I could not be possibly just one person. Try and unravel different identities of yourself as the world changes, as you change as an individual, as your relationships make you change. Don't be just looking at yourself as one person, and don't believe that if you were to destroy that notion of who you are, you're not going to have any other identity. One of my favorite quotes from my first book is that we have only one life, why live it with only one identity? And I remember Shruti saying this, that I don't know how to answer this question because I have 2 or 3 more startups in me. And that's awesome. But no, I hope that you go on to do multiple things and not just startup, and you go on to do multiple things and not just startup. And I go on to do multiple things and not just a startup and whatnot. Because that's when at the end of your life, when you're just ready to pass, you'll be like, no, that's an awesome life I got to live. And I truly, if nothing about the world and nothing about anyone else, I truly changed myself and questioned who I was and constantly and gave a honest answer and was authentic to who I was.
Before we close, I would like to thank all 3 of you for this amazing, inspiring chat that we've had. That's a wrap for this episode of The Changemakers with Forbes India and Hilton. A special thanks to our guests, Ankur Warikoo, Ahana Gautam, and Shruti for sharing their powerful insights, and to Hilton Manyata for providing the perfect environment for these groundbreaking conversations. Today's conversation has shown us that being consumer-centric, embracing change, and staying true to your purpose are essential to driving impactful change. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for episode 2.